everybody? Okay, we got through a whole chapter
千万
last
不要
week.
拍我。
还没有拍啦。
我就是
I
故意，我给你
No, I'm not yet.
等一下会翻脸。
闭。
今天是
偷拍。
10几号，这样打比较快。
1005啊。
1005。
哦。
Okay, you ready? All right, let's go. Chapter 7. Let's see if we can get through a whole chapter again. Page 67. I'm going to do more reading than talking again, hopefully. The profound debt owed to the Lotus Sutra and the protection received by those who spread the supreme law of universal enlightenment. Okay, everybody understands that? Who are those who spread the supreme law of universal enlightenment?
Us.
Yeah, who are they? Who are those who spread the supreme law of universal enlightenment? What's another term for those individuals? Of course, it is us. Bodhisattvas of the earth. The requirements of a votary of the Lotus Sutra. Nichiren Daishonin cites making a vow as the first and most essential requirement of a votary of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law. That is, the vow to maintain steadfast faith in the Lotus Sutra, the teaching of enlightenment, and to share it with others, irrespective of the difficulties one may encounter along the way. So I'll read it again because he makes it very clear there what we've been saying for the last several weeks. Nichiren Daishonin cites making a vow as the first and most essential requirement of a votary of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law. That is, the vow to maintain steadfast faith. What is that? Mugiwashi, right? Doubt-free faith, earnest faith to the last moment of your life, no matter what's occurring. Maintain steadfast faith in the Lotus Sutra, the teaching of enlightenment, and to share it with others, irrespective of the difficulties one may encounter along the way. That's a bodhisattva of the earth. Do you understand? Right?
Right.
Okay. You with me, brother?
Yes.
Okay. Next, he stresses the importance of having perseverance. What's perseverance? Never give up. Continue, 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 regardless of what you're encountering or experiencing. Next, he stresses the importance of having perseverance, specifically in terms of enduring. Enduring. What would be enduring? Means you withstand whatever weight of obstacle it is. Enduring persecution. All right? The hallmark of a votary of the Lotus Sutra is to maintain true to one's vow and to persevere even amid the most overwhelming obstacles. However, this is not simply a matter of passive forbearance, as I said a week ago. Rather, it means waging a ceaseless struggle to surmount every trial and emerge victorious. What's surmount? To overcome. Okay? So he says, rather, it means waging a ceaseless struggle to overcome every trial and emerge victorious. So this is never about just taking it and putting up with it and being, not complaining about your selfless suffering. It's to not have selfless suffering. It's to be able to view correctly what those obstacles are. They are not suffering. They're the means by which you express your Buddhahood. They're the means by which you attain enlightenment in your present form. In the absence of them, there is no such function in your life. Do you understand? They go hand in hand. It's part of the fundamental aspect of life. All right? Also, along with perseverance, Nichiren lists compassion as a vital requirement. This is because the strength to endure hardships derives from compassion for others. Nothing can daunt the compassion of a votary of the Lotus Sutra, determined to lead all people of the latter day to enlightenment. In the face of such compassion, even the greatest obstacles are, say the Daishonin, no more than dust before the wind. Lastly, by explaining the Buddhist principle of voluntarily assuming the appropriate karma, the Daishonin teaches that a votary who practices exactly as the Sutra teaches calmly surmounts all sufferings and hardships that are part of life in the evil age of the latter day and possesses a state of life of boundless joy. Everybody remembers what voluntarily assuming the appropriate karmas, right? That's gan kin o go. This is chapter 7. All right. We didn't read this last week, did we?
We didn't.
Okay, I just am deja vuing all over the place here. The doubts of others and the Daishonen's own doubts. Okay, now when I started reading this lecture, this is what I said that this Gosho was about. He's going to finally acknowledge that this is a major thrust of the Gosho, of the opening of the eyes, okay, is to qualify why did Nichiren not receive protection from the Buddhist gods as it relates to the vow that those people in the Lotus Sutra made to uphold, to protect those who embrace and uphold the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law. Do you understand? There was a lot of consternation about why wasn't Nichiren protected, all right, when in fact he was, in actuality. They wanted it to be protection that means no obstacles. It's never that way. All right? The doubts of others and the Daishonen's own doubts. And this is from the Gosho. And yet the people doubt me, and I too have doubts about myself. Why did the gods not assist me? Heavenly gods and other guardian deities made their vow before the Buddha. Even if the votary of the Lotus Sutra were an ape rather than a man, they should address him as the votary of the Lotus Sutra and rush forward to fulfill the vow they made before the Buddha in the Lotus Sutra. Does their failure to do so mean that I am in fact not a votary of the Lotus Sutra? This doubt lies at the heart of this piece I am writing, the opening of the eyes Gosho. And because it is the most important concern of my entire life, I will raise it again and again here and emphasize it more than ever before I attempt to answer it. Okay, does everybody understand? All right, so Nichiren had made a vow, and he possessed perseverance, compassion, and joy. He had a towering state of life. It goes without saying, therefore, that he had stood up with the conviction that he was the votary of the Lotus Sutra of the latter day of the law, okay, and capable of propagating his Buddhism of the sowing, which was a different teaching that had ever been taught before. Do you understand? Right? Everything else has been based on the Buddhism of the harvest. His teaching is the only teaching based on the Buddhism of the sowing. Nevertheless, in the opening of the eyes, while expressing this firm conviction that he is a votary of the Lotus Sutra, the Daishonin also speaks of serious doubts. Okay? So what does this mean? What does this immediately qualify for all of us? The truth of the fact that even those at the stage of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi still possess the aspect of fundamental darkness in their life. In other words, we as bodhisattvas of the earth, as Buddhas in our present form, will still experience the influence of the struggle with fundamental darkness. Our actual Ichinen Sanzen is the process of becoming victorious over that obstacle, but not the elimination or the existence of that obstacle. Because we always perceive and appreciate it because we know that all others that we are encouraging to follow in our footsteps are going to have to overcome and express and experience that same process. Do you understand? So, it's never about anything other than the fact that we're all equal. We're all human beings living in the 9 worlds. All right? He writes, and yet the people doubt me, and I too have doubts about myself. Why did the gods not assist me? Does their failure to do so mean that I am, in fact, not a votary of the Lotus Sutra? That very question would be a process of fundamental darkness manifesting itself. Do you understand? Yes. That's the whole issue of fundamental darkness, is those questions that occur in our own minds as we persevere and have compassion and follow through with doubt-free faith. Okay? Don't be surprised when they occur. The Daishonin is, the example. We're not disqualified because we have those thoughts. But we should always get to the bottom of them. We should never let them fester or just be there, lingering, without making the determination to find out what is the truth. All right? That's why, again, fundamental darkness, the devil of the 6th heaven, is your best friend. Because in the absence of the devil of the 6th heaven, you cannot attain Buddhahood. The devil of the 6th heaven is your trainer. One more rep. Don't give up. Make it as hard as you can so that you develop the structure that's necessary to be the Buddha. He is asking why the heavenly deities do not protect him, the votary of the Lotus Sutra. Surely they had vowed in the presence of Shakyamuni to rigorously protect anyone who practiced the Lotus Sutra in the latter day, no matter who that person might be. Does the absence of their protection therefore mean that he is not the votary of the Lotus Sutra? The doubt is closely related to Nichiren's purpose in composing this treatise. The government's harsh crackdown on the Daishonin, which culminated in the Tatsunokuchi persecution, Nichiren's near execution on September 12, 1271, and his ensuing Sato exile, was also directed at his community of believers as a whole. Many of his followers were harassed and persecuted. The authorities punished them with fines, banishment, or confiscation of their lands. As a result, a large majority of his followers in Kamakura abandoned their faith. He writes, "Among my disciples and followers, however, those who are cowards have for the most part either given in or retreated at heart from the great battle. And 999 out of 1,000 people gave up their faith when I was arrested." The reply to Niiyama. Okay, so do you understand what he's also explaining here? What is he also explaining here? Read deeper. What did he just say here? The government's harsh crackdown on the Daishonin, which culminated in the Tatsunokuchi persecution and his ensuing Sato Island, was also directed at his community of believers as a whole. Many of his followers were harassed and persecuted. So what's he telling you there? This doubt is closely related to Nichiren's purpose in composing this treatise. Do you understand? Okay. Again, if his followers are seeing that he's not being protected, the question is, are they? No, they're experiencing the same thing. Are they not votaries of the Lotus Sutra? Has he not told them that they are votaries of the Lotus Sutra by upholding his teaching? Yes. Okay. Do they feel like they're getting protection? Probably not. So what is his function? Is to serve as the ambassador to reality for all living beings. To actually live through what they will have to live through in order to follow in his footsteps. Is to give them answers to their own doubts through answering the doubts that one might have about himself. Do you understand? Yes. Okay, so that's the whole thing here. Why did he go through it? Because we were going to go through it. Why did we go through it? Because he went through it. Okay, there is no differentiation between his life and our own. Okay, do you understand? So, he says, many in society scathingly asked why, if Nichiren were truly the votary of the Lotus Sutra as he claimed, he and his followers did not enjoy protection from the heavens. So a lot of people judged the validity of his teaching based on the fact that he was being persecuted and his followers were being persecuted, and they didn't seem to have the ability to protect themselves just through chanting the Daimoku. Do you understand? Of course, they weren't getting thrown off their horses and having their necks broken, or dying in famine, in epidemics, and so forth. So there was a very convenient way to view persecution and victory. Many in society scathingly asked why, if Nichiren were truly the votary of the Lotus Sutra as he claimed, he and his followers did not enjoy protection from the heavens. Many of his erstwhile followers may have also entertained the same doubt. His remaining followers, meanwhile, though they continued to put their trust in him and carried on valiantly in their Buddhist practice, did not know how to rebut the criticisms of ex-followers and others in society. They didn't have a valid answer of where is the protection. These people that are upholding the Lotus Sutra are supposed to be protected, period. Yet they're not seemingly being protected, including the votary of the Lotus himself, the teacher of the Buddhism of the Sowing, Nichiren. Perhaps many of them were bitterly frustrated by this and wished they knew how to respond based on correct Buddhist doctrine. So he writes the opening of the eyes. Do you understand? His great compassion. In order to dispel people's negativity and instill them with confidence, it was imperative that Nichiren provide clear answers to the doubts raised by both his followers and the general populace. Okay, so he poses them as doubts of his own. Do you understand? He didn't possess any doubts. He had already declared himself as the votary of the Lotus Sutra. He was not short on confidence that he had the correct teaching. All right? But he couldn't, but he had to qualify, he had to acknowledge, hey, there's supposed to be protection. You might misread why you think it is that I'm not being protected. And in fact, again, as an ordinary person, as Nichiren went through this metamorphosis of becoming the Buddha and attaining actual Ichinen Sanzen, the first to attain actual Ichinen Sanzen, okay? What did he basically intimate in his letters? He fully anticipated that the government would not blow him off, that they would call everybody together so he could debate them. He could defeat them all in debate, and that would be the end of it. He could start to lead everybody along the path of Kosen Rufu, right? But that isn't the way it went down. All right? So he says, in order to dispel people's negativity and instill them with confidence, it was imperative that Nichiren provide clear answers to the doubts raised by both his followers and the general populace. The greater part of this treatise is devoted to clarifying such doubts. Here, in addition to addressing the doubts held by others, Nichiren also speaks of his own doubts. Of course, this does not mean that he had doubts in the sense of being confused or lacking faith. While the public and many of his followers had their doubts, the Daishonin naturally blazed with the powerful conviction that he and no other was the votary of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law. His writings make that very clear. All right? What he qualifies is, I can understand how you might all have doubts. And I wonder myself, why am I not being protected? So that's why I have to give you these answers that I've come up with on my own. If he were indeed the votary, as he said, however, an important question had to be answered. That is why the heavenly deities did not rise into action to protect him. It seems clear that Nichiren's own doubts center around the issue of the heavenly deities' promise to lend their protection to those who uphold the Lotus Sutra. The doubts of others as to whether the Daishonin was in fact the votary of the Lotus Sutra, and his own doubts as to why the heavenly deities did not act to protect him, these 2 points are inextricably bound. This doubt is the most important concern of my entire life, from the Gosho that I just read a little while ago. The Daishonin writes with regard to this two-sided question of why, if he is the votary of the Lotus Sutra, he does not receive protection. This doubt lies at the heart of this piece I am writing, and it is the most important concern of my entire life. All right? Beyond the thick clouds of doubt that shrouded people's hearts lies a vibrant blue sky of great conviction, illuminated by the sun that shines serenely high above those clouds. Dispelling this doubt would also prepare the way for clarifying the object devotion in terms of the person, that he is the original teacher. Therefore, the Daishonin writes, I will emphasize it in this doubt more than ever before I attempt to answer it. He aims to thoroughly resolve this doubt by first bringing it into sharp focus. His ensuing discussion on this subject in the opening of the eyes can be divided into 2 sections. The first of the 2 sections dealing with this issue of non-protection and the doubts that are derived from that. In the first section, he explains the profound debt owed to the Lotus Sutra by persons of the 2 vehicles, the voice hearers and cause awakened ones, bodhisattvas and heavenly and human beings, and others who together function as heavenly deities or protective forces. All those things we see on the face of the Gohonzon, the 4 heavenly kings, the sun goddess, Hachiman, Tiantai, Dengyo's up there, the gods of the sun, the moon, and the stars are up there. I mean, Shakyamuni and Tahoe Buddha, many treasures Buddha are up there. The 4 great bodhisattvas of Jogyo, Anrugyo, Mohingyo, and Jogyo are up there. That's what the Gohonzon is, right? Is all these people from the Lotus Sutra, right? Who have all vowed to protect the votaries in the latter day. All right, so let me start again. The middle of that second column, page 69. In the first section, he explains the profound debt owed to the Lotus Sutra by persons of the 2 vehicles, the voice hearers and cause awakened ones, bodhisattvas, heavenly and human beings, and others who together function as heavenly deities or protective forces, who are only able to attain enlightenment for the first time through its teaching. Okay? How is that so? They were only able to attain enlightenment for the first time through its teaching because it was only in the teaching of the Lotus Sutra that numberless major world system dust particle kalpas ago came up as the issue of when Shakyamuni in fact attained Buddhahood. All right? Which was supposition for all living beings. Do you understand? He then deliberately emphasizes the public's doubt that the failure of these beings to appear and protect him may indicate that he is not the sutra's votary. Everybody's with me? Are you? All right. While he seems to be reinforcing this doubt here, the Daishonin is in fact discussing the true nature of the protection of the heavenly deities. Again, heavenly deities are not separated from your life. They are not deities that are other entities outside of you. Everybody's with me on that, right? Yes. Okay. However, in 13th century Japan, he's still speaking of them in that regard because that's the historical predication in Buddhism that they exist. Don't forget, much has been qualified by the ensuing practitioners of the Buddhism of the sowing since the 700-year-old advent of it. Nichikan has come along. Nikko Shonin has come along. The 3 founding presidents have come along. Understand all that, all right? At this time, he's in the middle of having been, exiled to Sado Island. The people he left behind are quite certain they will never see him again. And he's writing them to tell them, don't be discouraged. And don't worry about any of this, it'll all work out. All right? So, while he seems to be reinforcing this doubt here, the Daishonin is in fact discussing the true nature of the protection of the heavenly deities. Namely, it is their debt of gratitude to the Lotus Sutra, the teaching by which they gained enlightenment, that prompts them to protect the Sutra's votary. He also clarifies that the true essence of a votary of the Lotus Sutra is a person who practices the teaching for attaining Buddhahood. What is the teaching for attaining Buddhahood? He also clarifies that the true essence of a votary of the Lotus Sutra is a person who practices the teaching for attaining Buddhahood. The teaching that you practice for attaining Buddhahood in the latter day of the law is the Buddhism of sowing. Okay? It's not to be confused with something that preceded it in the former or the middle day of the law. He's qualifying that. That's why he's saying the Buddhism for attaining enlightenment in your present form. Do you understand? Because that isn't the basis. There's nothing in the Lotus Sutra that does that. Unless you're Tentai. Do you understand? In the absence of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and the Buddhism of the sowing, there's nothing in the 28th chapter Lotus Sutra that is the Buddhism of the harvest that can help you attain enlightenment in the latter day. It has to be the relationship with the original teacher in the form of the correct object of devotion. Do you understand? That's what he's saying here. He's saying that first of all, he's saying that he also clarifies that the true essence of a votary of the Lotus Sutra, okay, is a person who practices the teaching for attaining Buddhahood, is a person that practices the Buddhism of the sowing, chants Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Do you understand?
Yes.
All right. So, in the second section, the Daishonin discusses such points as the 3 pronouncements in the Treasure Tower, the 11th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, in which Shakyamuni urges the assembled bodhisattvas 3 times to propagate the sutra after his passing. The 2 admonitions in the Devadatta chapter, the 12th chapter, in which Shakyamuni teaches the enlightenment of all people, and the 20-line verse section in the encouraging devotion, the 13th chapter, which describes the three powerful enemies who will assail the votary or the votaries of the Lotus Sutra in an evil age after the Buddha's passing. Everybody's with me? All right? So, what does the Peaceful Practices chapter teach? What does the Peaceful Practices chapter teach? Well, pardon me, not the Peaceful Practices. What does the Encouraging Devotion chapter teach? What are all those big smiles?
I have to follow you.
Huh? Oh, you need me to go this way again? Sorry? All right. Pardon me. Oh, you could, okay. You're with me. All right, thanks to this live stream. That's cool. All right. I want to make sure I didn't forget my point just now. Okay, yeah, encouraging devotion. What is the encouraging devotion chapter teaching? Shall I get it up and read it again so you can remember more clearly?
Yes.
Hang on just a second. It's going to come to you very quickly. Remember, I already read this to you, right? And in it, what's happening? The assembly is speaking to Shakyamuni, and they're telling him, "Don't worry about it." He's going, "Who will uphold this law?" He's going, They're going, "Don't worry. In the time of evil people, yada yada yada, when the Buddha has da 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 da." He says, we're going to do all this stuff no matter what these guys do. Right? All right? So, what's it say here that these practitioners who uphold the law in the latter day, in the encouraging devotion chapter, okay? Right? Where it describes the three powerful enemies. This is the 20-verse teaching, right? So what does it say that's going to happen to them? It says that they're going to be attacked. It says that they're going to have to endure all kinds of shit. It doesn't say they're going to be protected. Does it? It doesn't say that that's not going to happen to them. Or I should say, it doesn't say that protection comes in the form of no adversity. Does it? It spells out the adversity very clearly. So it's not saying that protection is no adversity. It's saying what protection is. That we will overcome all of this no matter what they lay on us. We will have perseverance. We will have the compassion of the Buddha as he's instructed us. Okay? That's what it's saying here. All right? So that's why that Daishonin's got to qualify to everybody. You're all looking for something that doesn't exist. You're looking for a practice. In fact, what does he say? What's the chapter that follows the encouraging devotion? Peaceful practices. When we read the Angikuden, the record of the orally transmitted teachings, what does he say to be viewed? What should we view as peaceful practices? The crap that's described in the encouraging devotion. Those obstacles, all that stuff that allows us to attain Buddhahood in a single lifetime, all those things that allow us to actualize and manifest actual Ichen and Sanzen, to be the Buddha, the living Buddha, exactly as we are. Those are all to be considered our good friends. Those are to be considered our peaceful practices. Those are the gateway to enlightenment. Do you understand? That devil of the sixth heaven is the guy calling us, not repelling us. It's our faith that says, I'm not afraid of you. I already know what to expect. I said okay. Anyhow, I was warned in advance. I could have chickened out. I chose not to. I took a vow. Do you understand? That's why the perseverance is necessary. I signed up to take a lot of shit. Okay? I signed up for it. It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't discourage me. I defeat all of it. Just because it's there posing a threat to my very existence doesn't mean I won't kick its ass. Do you understand?
Yeah.
That's why I have Mugiwashi. Do you understand? All right, so going back, he's saying, the 13th, which describes the two. In the course of this discussion, the Daishonin shows that he himself is practicing in complete accord with the sutra. He's practicing in complete accord with the 20-verse line, or 20-line verse, okay, of the encouraging devotion chapter. Do you understand? He's living the sutra. That's what is the sutra? It's the body of the eternal Buddha. Okay? He's living the existence of the teaching that's professed in this manuscript. Okay? That can't be the body yet, because the Buddha, that is this body, has not yet made his advent until the latter day. Do you understand? This is the body of the Lotus Sutra that saves everybody. The teaching of enlightenment is the body of the eternal Buddha. Do you understand? All right. It's the source. It's the original teacher. All right. In the course of this discussion, the Daishonin shows that he himself is practicing in complete accord with the sutra. In other words, what he is reading that he is reading the Lotus Sutra with his life. Okay? As we are encouraged to. You are encouraged to read this as though it's speaking of you. You are encouraged to read this as though you are the Buddha in the latter day. You are the votary of the Lotus Sutra. That's the whole point. It's not something outside of you. It's completely 100% totally about you. All right? That's the wisdom of the Buddha to perceive that. Then once you cross the line of actualization and silence, you understand all of this is about you, the Buddha. All right? It's not about other people. It's about you. It's what you have to do in this moment, in this lifetime. Okay. At the same time, he also reveals the ugly face of the slander of the law that is rampant throughout the land and that functions to obstruct the propagation of the Lotus Sutra, the teaching for attaining Buddhahood. What did he say in the last chapter that ugly face really is manifest from? It's from the slander of the others. Okay? That's why we are taking on Sancho Shima. Okay? Something that's validated through our aspiration for Buddhahood. Okay? Not something that's reflective of slander of the law. The obstacle, the difficult environment in which we must try and accomplish what we vowed to accomplish is created by the slander of the others. Do you understand? Right? We manifest in and out of our compassion. Follow? All right. Here Nichiren confirms his belief, based on the sutra's passages, that he is the votary of the Lotus Sutra. But given his apparent failure to receive protection from the heavenly deities, he once again reiterates his own doubt. Nichiren then goes on to provide answers to these doubts from various perspectives. For the time being, suffice it to say that the main point he makes in it is that the heavenly deities failed to lend him their protection because they have abandoned the country on account of its being steeped in slander. However, this is still just a partial answer. The true answer is found in the passage revealing Nichiren's great vow that begins, "This I will state, let the gods forsake me, let all persecutions assail me. Still I will give my life for the sake of the law." In other words, the very same vow we should all have taken in our own lives. All right? In other words, the issue is not whether one enjoys the protection of the heavenly deities. The true votary of the Lotus Sutra is someone who maintains the great desire for Kosen Rufu even in the face of enormous obstacles and ceaselessly struggles to lead people to enlightenment in a land filled with slander of the law, and that continues to persevere against all obstacles without caring about protection from their influence so that they can validate the absolute power of faith. Do you understand? All right, so ultimately, in the second section, it becomes clear that the votary of the Lotus Sutra encounters momentous persecutions by virtue of being a person who boldly fights against the evil of slandering the law, the teaching for attaining Buddhahood. Further, such a genuine votary enjoys the true protection of the heavenly deities. What is the true protection of the heavenly deities? Not the absence of difficulty, the absolute 100% victory in all situations. That's the true protection of the heavenly deities. It's the ability to attain Buddhahood in your present form. Do you follow? I would like to take up this point again after discussing the first section in some detail. So we'll get to it again. The profound debt owed to the Lotus Sutra by persons of the two vehicles. Why would you guess before we start reading that there would be a profound debt owed to the Lotus Sutra by persons of the two vehicles? Who are the persons of the two vehicles? Persons of learning and realization. Okay? Right? Not the bodhisattvas. Right? So, why? Why would persons of learning and realization have a profound debt to the Lotus Sutra?
They will never attain Buddhahood.
Huh?
They will never attain Buddhahood without Lotus Sutra.
That's right. Lotus Sutra is the only teaching that says that they can attain Buddhahood. Right? Without the Lotus Sutra. What was that? What? Okay. All right, so that's it, and then then the same follows on. Why can heavenly beings attain Buddha? Why can bodhisattvas attain Buddha? Why can human beings? It's because of the Lotus Sutra. That's the teaching that contains Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which is the teaching that allows everybody to attain enlightenment. In the first section of this discussion, Nichiren starts by clarifying that persons of the two vehicles, along with the bodhisattvas and heavenly and human beings, owe a profound debt to the Lotus Sutra. This is because only when Shakyamuni finally expounds the Lotus Sutra are they able to attain enlightenment for the first time. To repay that immense debt of gratitude, they vow in the presence of Shakyamuni to protect those who practice the Lotus Sutra. Right? That's what that whole thing in the 13th chapter was about. That is why the Daishonin asserts that they would naturally come to the aid of the votary of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law. Nichiren then discusses the importance of repaying debts of gratitude. Repaying debts of gratitude is the highest human virtue. Conversely, those who forget their debts are sure to deviate from the path that one should follow as a human being. In order to attain and express the highest state one can as a human being, which is Buddhahood. The light of genuine humanity shines in recognizing and repaying one's debt of gratitude. Nichiren asserts that especially the persons of the two vehicles, bodhisattvas, heavenly beings, and the others who heard Shakyamuni preach the Lotus Sutra should not possibly have forgotten the profound debt of gratitude to that teaching. Do you understand what he's saying there then? What is he saying there then? He's saying that all of you that can understand what I'm expressing, all innately should have a deep, sincere sense of gratitude to the Lotus Sutra. Because it's the only teaching that allows all of you the potentiality of being able to attain Buddhahood in your present form. It's the only teaching that says that all of you, whether you're in the humanly realm or the heavenly beings realm or in the realm of learning or the realm of realization or bodhisattvas, you're already all Buddhas exactly as you are. It's the only teaching that does that. So he's saying everyone, regardless of whether they're my follower, should in fact have a profound respect and debt of gratitude toward the Lotus Sutra. So he's immediately saying that whether people realize it or not, if they are not expressing a debt of gratitude, they're not even behaving as human beings. Do you understand? That very act of not expressing gratitude is slander of the law. Do you follow? It's not an abstract reality, it's the truth. Do you understand? Why? Because that's the predication of the teaching. Is everybody with me? Have I missed anything? Is anybody confused? Okay. he's saying, Nichiren asserts that especially the person of the two vehicles, bodhisattvas, heavenly beings, and others who heard Shakyamuni preach the Lotus Sutra could not possibly have forgotten their profound debt of gratitude to that teaching. The first group he takes up in this discussion is persons of the two vehicles. Here he compares the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings with the Lotus Sutra. The former thoroughly denounces persons of the two vehicles as incapable of attaining Buddhahood, while the latter makes it possible for them to do so. In the pre-Lotus Sutra teaching, Shakyamuni relentlessly castigates the voice hearers. To offer a simple illustration of how harsh the Buddha's condemnation was, Nichiren says that when the voice hearer, Venerable Mahakashayapa, was told he would never be able to gain enlightenment, the sound of his weeping and wailing echoed throughout the major world system. Shakyamuni's rebukes actually rose out of his great compassion as the Buddha. The persons of the two vehicles had forgotten about benefiting others and were only interested in benefiting themselves. Shakyamuni thus wished to help them break free of their inner darkness and delusion, because had they not been able to, they could have never gone on to being bodhisattvas and Buddhists. Do you understand? Yes. Or revealed the innate truth that as voice hearers and cause awakened ones, they already had the 10th world manifest and active in their life. All right? In the Lotus Sutra, the voice hearers acquire the medicine of immortality. Okay, as it's quoted by the Daishonin on page 243 in the opening of the eyes. Their inability to attain Buddhahood in earlier sutras had been tantamount to death as Buddhist practitioners. Why? Why? I'll read it again. In the Lotus Sutra, the voice hearers acquire the medicine of immortality. What is the medicine of immortality? The law as is expressed in the 16th chapter. Okay, the law. That's never qualified. Okay, but that is the medicine of immortality, because that is the predication of the teaching that allows one to attain Buddhahood in their present form, in the former and the middle day. Mm-hmm. And it's the basis in its depths for the deriving of the Buddhism of the sowing, which is the form for all people in the latter day. Do you understand? Okay, so he's saying that the voice hearers in the Lotus Sutra acquire the medicine of immortality. Their inability to attain Buddhahood in earlier sutras had been tantamount to death as Buddhist practitioners. Why? Because the Buddhahood that the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings taught all involved nirvana, as blowing out, as annihilation, okay, or as attaining a state where you would go to a Buddha land, separated from all other things, not a real place. So that's not real Buddhahood. Right? That would have been acquired enlightenment according to the Daishonin. Actual Ichinen Sanzen is true enlightenment. Do you understand? So, he's saying death as Buddhist practitioners, they would never be able to actually attain actual Buddhahood. Do you understand? All right, so the medicine of immortality is the ability to enter the realm of life and death in the realm of Buddhahood. Right? That's the thing that goes lifetime after lifetime after lifetime without any change. You always meet the correct teacher, always meet the correct teaching. You always attain Anattara Samyak Sambodhi. You always teach others. You always manifest as a bodhisattva and as the Buddha. Do you understand? All right, so their inability to attain Buddhahood in earlier sutras had been tantamount to death as Buddhist practitioners. However, in the Lotus Sutra, they move beyond the provisional teachings of reducing the body to ashes and annihilating the consciousness in order to attain nirvana, and finally gain the wisdom of the mystic law, beginningless time. Okay?
So
no beginning, no end. True identity. All right? Do you understand?
Yeah. So nirvana is a state outside of themselves.
Yes, nirvana is an expedient means. Nirvana as in having blown out. That's the Buddhism of the harvest. That's all expedient means. And it does not include the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra. Do you understand? All right, so, yeah, that's an expedient means. Nirvana is, there's no such thing as nirvana as it relates to the nirvana taught in the Hinayana and pre-Lotus Mahayana teachings. Clear? Clear. All right. Herein lies their revival as Buddhist practitioners. Revival as in tantamount to the death sentence. All right. So they've been revived from something that can never attain Buddhahood. They might as well be ichikantikas as to be practicers of Nimbutsu or true word or Zen or precepts. None of that is ever going to get them anywhere. Do you understand? That's just going to lead to hell of incessant suffering, hell of incessant suffering, hell of incessant suffering. Do you follow? There's no Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in that path. That's what he's talking about here. The reviving is the putting of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in that path. Do you understand? Which is, in essence, it's revealing in the 16th chapter for those in the former and the middle day, and it's revealing in the latter day as contained in the depths of the 16th chapter, as the Buddhism of the sowing. Do you follow? Is everybody with me? Is anybody confused by what I'm saying here? All right, so herein lies their revival as Buddhist practitioners. Therefore, the Lotus Sutra is the medicine of immortality. It contains Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. In the Lotus Sutra, the four great voice hearers who each receive a prophecy of attaining enlightenment make a vow saying, now we have become voice hearers in truth. What does that mean? That's voice hearers that have heard the truth, the law, not as an expedient means. Okay? Transcending their earlier selves, that is, of voice hearers who only listened superficially to the Buddha's voice and had a shallow understanding of what he is saying, they have now deeply comprehended the Buddha's true wisdom. They further declare that they will henceforth struggle as genuine voice hearers to enable all people to hear the voice of the Buddha. This indicates their rebirth as bodhisattvas. Do you understand? Okay, they've gone from voice hearers, only people that are taught. They realize the truth through the teaching. They've now gone through the stage of cause awakened ones. Right? They've now realized the truth of the teaching. All right? And they have now, in that process, gone to a point where they can manifest as bodhisattvas. Because they're not people of the two vehicles anymore. They're not seeking this wisdom of the Buddha that he's talking about. And the medicine of immortality is to understand practicing for oneself and practicing for others. Okay? The essential aspect of being a bodhisattva. Okay? Do you understand? All right, so in the Lotus Sutra, okay, I've already read that. Transcending their earlier selves, that is, of voice hearers who only listen superficially to the Buddha's voice and has shallow understanding of what he was saying, they have now deeply comprehended the Buddha's true wisdom. They further declare that they will henceforth struggle as genuine voice hearers to enable all people to hear the voice of the Buddha. This indicates their rebirth as bodhisattvas. Theirs is a vow to fight together in a spirit of the oneness with their mentor. They break free from the narrow realm of self-absorption where they concentrate only on liberating themselves from suffering and soar into a realm as vast and boundless as the heavens, where they dedicate themselves to the cause of enabling all living beings to attain enlightenment. In the same sutra passage, they also emphasize again and again that the debt they owe to the Buddha is so enormous that they can never fully hope to repay it. That is the real basis of our taking the vow, is that realization that I can never repay this debt of gratitude. Okay, that's why we volunteered to go through all kinds of stuff, because we could never repay, no matter what we have to go through. Okay, if that's what you need me to help you with, that's what I will do. Nichiren asserts that the persons of the two vehicles, having acquired the Buddha eye and the Dharma eye, what does that mean? It means that those people of those two fundamental life conditions of learning and realization have now entered the realm of birth and death in the realm of Buddhahood. Okay, the 10th world has become awakened in their life. That's what having acquired the Buddha eye and the Dharma eye is, with which they can penetrate any of the worlds in the 10 directions, could not possibly fail to see a votary of the Lotus Sutra in this strife-filled Sahe world. Should a votary exist in the latter day, he says, then these sages would definitely come to his side and battle to protect him, even if they may have to pass through a great fire to do so. Otherwise, the prediction in the Lotus Sutra about widespread propagation in the 5th 500-year period after the Buddha's passing would be mere nonsense. Nichiren further asks why, in spite of this, the persons of the two vehicles of the Lotus Sutra failed to protect the Sutra's votary who is undergoing great persecution. He wonders if they are the allies of the slanderers of the law. While keenly censoring them for their inaction, the Daishonin repeatedly raises the question of why he has not received their protection and concludes his discussion on this subject with the words, "My doubts grow deeper than ever." We doing okay on time? Okay. The profound debt owed to the Lotus Sutra by bodhisattvas and human and heavenly beings. Next, Nichiren discusses the profound... let me see, what time is it?
8:55.
Okay. Next, the Daishonin discusses the profound debt owed to the Lotus Sutra by bodhisattvas and heavenly and human beings, while here again pointing out the difference between the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings and the Lotus Sutra. Nichiren further clarifies the doctrines expounded in the Lotus Sutra, the teaching for attaining Buddhahood, actual Ichinen Sanzen. He specifically discusses the doctrine of the mutual possession of the 10 worlds found in the Expedient Means, the 2nd chapter, and the doctrine of Shakyamuni's actual attainment of enlightenment in the remote past, elucidated in the lifespan, the 16th chapter. What did he just talk about there? Theoretical Ichinen Sanzen and actual Ichinen Sanzen, right? He then explains the profound debt of gratitude owed to the Lotus Sutra by the bodhisattvas and human and heavenly beings who were able to attain Buddhahood through this teaching. Nichiren notes that none of the bodhisattvas who appear in the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings were disciples of Shakyamuni. Ta-da! By the way. All right? For example, the bodhisattvas who appear in the Flower Garland Sutra have traveled from the Buddha lands in the 10 directions to gather before Shakyamuni just after he first attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree in India. They are not his disciples. This is the Flower Garland under the Bodhi tree, right? The Daishonin further states that in the pre-Lotus Sutra teaching, Shakyamuni does not expound any teachings surpassing the doctrines that these bodhisattvas preached. The bodhisattvas preached all these doctrines in the Flower Garland Sutra. Okay? All right. In the Lotus Sutra, these bodhisattvas press their palms together in reverence to Shakyamuni and request to hear the teaching of perfect endowment, which is the teaching that is ultimately the teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Nichiren explains that the teaching of perfect endowment means the doctrine of the mutual possession of the 10 worlds, right? Okay, which is attaining Buddhahood in your present form. Buddhahood's already there. And is none other than Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. He writes, in the phrase perfect endowment, endowment refers to the mutual possession of the 10 worlds, while perfect means that since there is mutual possession of the 10 worlds, that any one world contains all the other worlds, indicating this is perfect. All right, it's about Buddhahood in your present form, Buddhahood in the 9 worlds. Through the mutual possession of the 10 worlds, it becomes clear that each of the 10 worlds manifests its own Buddhahood, and that all people, therefore, equally have the potential to attain enlightenment. With regard to the passage in the Expedient Means chapter, the Buddhas wish to open the door of Buddha wisdom to all living beings. Nichiren writes, the term all living beings here refers to Shariputra, and it also refers to each Kantika's persons of incorrigible disbelief. It also refers to the 9 worlds. Okay? Here, The Daishonin clearly points out that it was not only the voice here Shariputra who was able to attain enlightenment through the teaching of perfect endowment, but also all people in the 9 worlds, including persons of incorrigible disbelief. Everybody's with me?
Yes.
All right. He further explains that by opening up the way for all people to attain enlightenment, Shakyamuni has fulfilled his vow to save innumerable living beings, and that all the bodhisattvas and heavenly beings understood that they had heard for the first time the Lotus Sutra's unsurpassed doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. All right, that unsurpassed doctrine is actually Ichinen Sanzen. Further, at this point of Shakyamuni's preaching in the Lotus Sutra, there is sufficient reason for the bodhisattvas to regard the sutra as a supreme teaching. However, the profound debt they owe the sutra only becomes truly apparent when Shakyamuni reveals in the lifespan chapter that he has actually attained enlightenment in the remote past. However, the profound debt they owe the sutra only becomes truly apparent when Shakyamuni reveals in the lifespan chapter that he has actually attained enlightenment in the remote past. This revelation, actually Ichinen Sanzen, indicates that all the other Buddhas who appear in the different sutras are in fact emanations of Shakyamuni. Consequently, the bodhisattvas who are the disciples of these Buddhas are ultimately all Shakyamuni's disciples. Former and middle day of the law.
Yes.
Okay? Thus, in the lifespan chapter, all Buddhas of the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings are unified in the Buddha who actually attained enlightenment in the remote past. It also becomes apparent that the Shakyamuni who attained enlightenment in the remote past is the Buddha who can be regarded as the teacher of all bodhisattvas who aspire for enlightenment. The Buddha who attained enlightenment in the remote past is the eternal Buddha who is one with the eternal mystic law. The fact that this Buddha is said to be the true identity of Shakyamuni, the Buddha who lived in ancient India, indicates that all people can bring forth in their own lives the power of the eternal mystic law, the fundamental law of the universe. A Buddha is a person who has activated the power of the eternal mystic law in his or her life. A Buddha is Myoho Renge-kyo. Myoho Renge-kyo is the true essence of the Buddha. It is the original Buddha. Does everybody understand what he's saying there? All right? Among all of the sutras said to have been expounded by Shakyamuni, the eternal mystic law is revealed as the seed of enlightenment for the first time in the form of the teachings of the lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra. That is, Shakyamuni's actual attainment of Buddhahood in the remote past. The Buddha of the lifespan chapter means Myoho Renge-kyo, which is the truest essence of the Buddha. And Myoho Renge-kyo is the law of life inherent within all people. And it is the seed for all people to attain enlightenment. This seed is hidden in the depths of the lifespan chapter. That's why the lifespan chapter is the highest teaching among all of the sutras. Nichiren thus praises the lifespan chapter as follows. If, among all the numerous sutras, this lifespan chapter should be lacking, it would be as though there were no sun or moon in the sky, no supreme ruler in the nation, no gems in the mountains and rivers, and no spirit in human beings. This is the reason why all bodhisattvas who aspire to attain enlightenment should feel a debt of gratitude toward the Lotus Sutra. But don't forget, again, in the Lotus Sutra, is the Lotus Sutra the Lotus Sutra? It's almost like a mirror within a mirror within a mirror within a mirror, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, because the Lotus Sutra is referred to in the preaching of the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra is taught as having existed before that preaching of the Lotus Sutra. Do you understand? That's why I'm trying to say it's the body of the original teacher. Okay? In the absence of the object of devotion, this is how it gets passed until the object of the true object of devotion can become manifest in the latter day. Do you understand? Okay. All right, so now I suppose it's teaching, right? It's time. All right, so we'll stop there. We'll stop on page 74. Everybody's clear with the point that I was just making, right? Okay. And you understand what I just read? Yes?
Yes.
Great. All right, so next week we'll start on page 74. Those ignorant of their indebtedness are nothing more than talented animals, because everybody that's not perceiving their indebtedness to the Lotus Sutra. Do you understand? That's what he's saying. All right? They do not have those higher worlds manifest. Learning, realization, they're inherently there. They're no more than animals. Falls under human beings, doesn't it? Hell, hunger, animals, asuras. So you see how he's correlating things. Right? Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you.